We have some new updates regarding around the Phoenix Suns. Matt Ishbia and Brian Gregory are not done on the trade front, as a recent report comes through stating that the Suns could still be expected to make some more moves post the Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant trades and waves. So what could that be in store for some potential players whose names have come up around Summer League and who could make some impacts for Jordan Aught's team? We'll be diving and exploring all of that and more on this episode of Suns Digest as we dive into the latest on this episode. I'm Bruce Veliz, and thank you guys so much for showing your love and support. Unfortunately, I was busy this weekend, could not get any videos up, so I wanted to dive in and explore some news that has been relevant here regarding the Phoenix Suns for you guys in this latest episode. So hope you guys are ready to dive in and explore everything. Make sure to grab that snack, and let's get into the latest updates coming from the Phoenix Suns realm on the trade front. And this is very interesting in my opinion when I hear this type of news. And Brett Siegel, a reporter for Clutch Points, one of the insiders, was on PHNX Suns this past week, and he had a show with Gerald and Eric where he said that the Suns basically are not done trying to make some moves after obviously offloading Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. He said that at Summer League, you heard that Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal are both names that are still on the trade block and names that the Suns are still exploring potentially to move off of with this team. And personally, I think this makes sense for this roster, and we'll get into a little bit why I do think that is the case. But ultimately, with looking at this Suns roster, we now know post Kevin Durant and post, obviously, Bradley Beal waiving, the Suns are now underneath the luxury tax here, dropping from one of the teams that had the most, one of the most expensive teams in the NBA to now one of the cheapest teams in the NBA. But with that being said, even with them still being relatively cheap, there are holes on this roster, and the roster itself already has 14 players on it, leaving an excess amount of a certain position. And if you look kind of at that center position and at that shooting guard position, you can clearly see that there is that excess there. And I do believe players like Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal kind of fall into that kind of situation along other players that kind of make them the odd man out in some of these scenarios. And since, like I mentioned, the Suns waived Bradley Beal here, we can see once again that they are now $2.1 million below the luxury tax, now giving them access to every sort of flexibility here in this offseason. The Suns want to use the full non-tax mid-level exception in free agency, which is $14 million, to sign a free agent. They can go out and use that to bring someone in. They want to use that to bring in two contracts, right, with their two roster spots open. Bringing in a guy that makes $5 million and a guy that makes $9 million. Bringing in a guy that makes $7 million and another one that makes $7 million. The Phoenix Suns are allowed to do that, but they also have the flexibility on the trade market, and that's where I think ultimately things are going to come into play, and why the Suns are having these discussions revolving around Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal. Because if you look at this roster here in free agency, there's very slim pickings now at this point, with the Suns obviously being 3 weeks into the process and now having that flexibility, right? They didn't have this flexibility right immediately into free agency, so it was a little bit difficult to make moves. But now that the Suns have kind of seen some things shaped out and have moved on from Bradley Beal, they have these new opportunities to bring some of these names in. And I don't think in free agency they're going to find a lot of what they want, or if they do find, some of those top tier guys that can fill some roles for them, ultimately I do think they already have those kind of on the roster here lined up already. And if we want to look at the contracts for the Phoenix Suns, looking at Royce O'Neal and Grayson Allen, they are some of the more expensive ones here on this Suns roster, right? Obviously, Booker is making his $50 million, Jalen Green making his $30 million, Dillon Brooks making his $20 million, but then after that, you have Grayson Allen making his $17 million and Royce O'Neal making his $9 million. And not only do they make it for this season, but they make it for at least 2 more seasons added onto that, which makes it very difficult for the Suns to have that flexibility in other seasons with their limited trade value already, with their limited draft capital. So I do think where the Suns trying to move off these guys, specifically in a season where you don't necessarily need them, should be the key, because you can have some of these younger guys that are on these rookie scale contracts be able to play and kind of figure out what they can bring to you as a role within this team. And then once you have those really identified, then you can kind of figure out what other role pieces you do need added. At this point, the Suns don't need multiple role pieces kind of added together. They need to kind of evaluate who's going to be those sticking stones alongside Devin Booker and then find out those added pieces. Now, obviously, the Suns still have that dead money added on top as well. Bradley Beal's $19 million over 5 seasons, Nazir Little's $3 million, and EJ Liddell's $700,000. It's going to put the Suns roughly right around $22 to $23 million in dead cap going into this season. But even with all of that, they are still flexible underneath these salaries because they have all these rookie scale deals. Now, once again, Mark Williams is coming up with an extension this offseason. Nigel Hayes-Davis will be a free agent. Colin Gillespie may need another extension. So if you're the Phoenix Suns here, you obviously could put yourself into a situation where you do have to pay some money and might have to be rising up there in the stratosphere. And maybe that makes a little bit difficult to make more moves down the line, specifically with no really draft capital. But I think by moving off of Grayson and Royce, now it kind of gives you that outlook. And for the reasons why I want to state why I think they kind of need to be moved is because I don't really think there's necessarily a role for these guys anymore on the Suns roster. And ultimately, that is kind of sad to say because I do really like them and I think they can provide quality roles on other teams. But we look at this offseason breakdown, right? Look at this power forward position. This is projected from Bobby Marks, their starting roster. I don't think that this is going to be their starting roster. Ultimately, mine is going to be Devin Booker at the 1, Jalen Green at the 2, Dylan Brooks at the 3, Oso Ighodaro at the 4, and Mark Williams at the 5. We have seen, not only just in Summer League, but with how confident that the Suns feel with having Jalen Green and Devin Booker within this unit, that it does seem very resemblant that Jordan Ott, the former assistant for the Cleveland Cavaliers, is going to want to bring that system in here. We saw a double big being run all throughout the Summer League, and I think that's something to kind of anticipate going into next season. With that being said, that would make Ryan Dunn obviously being that dynamic 3 off the bench, coming out there being your 6th man, Grayson Allen playing that backup point guard role, and then you have obviously Mark Williams, Oso Ighodaro starting, Kama Malawach coming off as that bench 5, and then you could play Royce O'Neal and could play Grayson Allen at that 2 and 4, right? But don't you want to see the development of Rasheer Fleming, your rookie that you traded up for to basically catapult everyone in the draft lottery to go up and get at the first overall pick on day 2 in the draft? I would suspect so. Wouldn't you want the Phoenix Suns to use Nigel Hayes-Davis, someone that is also trying to compete for a roster spot and trying to fight back in the NBA? I would think so. And ultimately, I think that pushes a guy in Royce O'Neal into a tough situation because then the Phoenix Suns have these opportunities, right, where they can run that double big lineup, they can run Brooks and Dunn alongside each other, they can run Oso and Mark Williams, they can run Oso and Malawach, they can run Malawach and Mark Williams. Those kind of possibilities, not even adding the fact of Rasheer Fleming and Nigel Hayes-Davis struggle trying to get some run between that power forward and small forward position. It does seem like that forward kind of place for Royce O'Neal isn't really there. And for a player in Royce who's now going to be 30 years old, still a solid 3-and-D wing here in the NBA, and still can be a solid competitor on a championship or a playoff team or a championship level team, making only $9 to $10 million. That's some great value for a guy in Royce O'Neal. And I think for the Phoenix Suns, trying to figure out a trade that kind of benefits them and trying to shed some money, but also kind of getting in another position of need, that point guard, and trying to figure out who can be that secondary playmaker and running the pick and roll alongside Colin Gillespie on that bench unit and be that, kind of filler guy just in case some injuries come down the line. I think the Suns could use a contract like that in Royce O'Neal to get him. Grayson Allen obviously becomes a little bit more different here because he obviously is a shooting guard, and now with Bradley Beal kind of out of this situation here, there's no necessarily big need to try to change him. But if you do move Colin Gillespie to the bench, you move Devin Booker up into that other guard position here, and you do sign another point guard, potentially another point guard, and have Kobe Bryant as a 2-way on this team, it does kind of send some alarming sounds for Grayson Allen. And I don't think necessarily it might be at the beginning of this season. I think Royce O'Neal is more an ideal trade candidate just because of the clog at that forward position, and because he is a little bit cheaper, maybe it is a little bit easier for the Suns to move off of him. But Grayson Allen, I think, is someone also the Suns could consider, even though he does provide some solid 3-point shooting and, could be a spark plug off the bench. I see that kind of in Kobe Bryant already. We already saw a team last year who dealt with injuries have a guy in Colin Gillespie play on a 2-way deal and rise to the occasion. And I think we could potentially see that with Kobe Bryant going into this season, where by the end of the year, he has a fully guaranteed spot. And if that's the case, I don't think there's really any need for Grayson Allen on the roster, specifically when he's making $15 more million than a guy in Kobe Bryant would be, with Grayson Allen making 17 and Bryant becoming a rookie making around $2 to $3 million. So in that kind of case, for the Suns not only to shed some money, but also give them more flexibility down the line for these contract extensions for a Mark Williams, for a Kama Malawach, for Ryan Dunn, or for the potential to go out and have money to sign a superstar in free agency or perform a sign and trade in free agency. I think that's kind of the aspect you have to kind of understand and why I'm trying to trade a guys in Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal, because ultimately their role isn't really there. Now Grayson, obviously you could argue, has a little bit of a bigger role there as well. With Bradley Beal now being taken out, there's not as much guards there, and you could kind of make a reason to keep Grayson Allen. But I do believe if we do see the rise of Kobe Bryant through the Valley Suns this season, or even getting some opportunities with this real Phoenix Suns team, either in some injuries or some times where the Phoenix Suns just aren't looking great, I do think Grayson Allen could provide himself to be a valuable contract for a team trying to win, and for the Suns to kind of make some sense and bring in someone up that's a little bit younger that could kind of fit their new identity and new regime. Also, looking at that center department, I don't know what they'll really do. Like I mentioned, once again, I expect a lot of double big within this Suns team. So Mark Williams, Oso Guardado kind of playing along each other. Malawach, maybe Mark Williams playing alongside each other. Oso Guardado and Kama Malawach playing alongside each other. What does that really mean for Nick Richards? Does he really just become an injury insurance backup big and something that the Suns will technically just hold on to throughout the season until some teams do get some injuries and do need a backup center to where they can get the best value of it? Maybe that's the case, but ultimately, I would keep my eyes out on that center rotation for the Suns, as well as Nick Richards kind of does put himself as the odd man out with Oso Guardado's nice development through the summer league, with the intrigue from Kama Malawach being that 10th overall pick, and with him trading for Mark Williams and wanting to see what he could impact. It doesn't seem like any of those guys seem to be the ones out the door, as all eyes are on them, and a guy like Nick Richards could be that one that does leave, if anybody does. But like I said, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Brett Siegel from Clutch Points was lucky enough to hop on PHNX to discuss this with Gerald and Eric and kind of give us this insight, which is absolutely fantastic, I think, for all of us to kind of understand what this team really wants to do. Ultimately, as you guys know, I don't necessarily want to part with Royce O'Neal. I would love to keep him, but as like stated multiple times, this wing room is just really seems too clogged for a guy in Royce O'Neal to be able to make an impact, or at least a winning impact, to help this team out. Unless they want to, have Nigel Hayes-Davis and Rasheer Fleming as just, bench forward. Maybe that's the case. But ultimately, I do believe that he could provide a little bit more on another team. And that's not no slack on Royce O'Neal. I just don't think that there's enough opportunity for him here, and I want to see the best for him. Similar for Grayson Allen. Ultimately, I think that the Suns have that kind of replacement in Kobe Bryant. And even if they don't right away, I do think down the line we can kind of see that kind of transpire with Grayson Allen kind of being moved out within this Suns rotation. But let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section, how you guys feel about this Phoenix Suns team and what moves you would like to see them go out and do. Like I said, I didn't state any trades within these types of videos, but if there's any names that you guys would like to see potentially moved out for Royce O'Neal, Grayson Allen, or etc. to fill a void for this Suns team, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. And like I said, thank you guys so much for tuning in and showing your support. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your day, and go Phoenix Suns. Peace out, everyone.